This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show, and this is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, I'm sitting here on New Year's Eve here in 2018, and awaiting 2019. I'm wearing a Ms. 45 t-shirt, and its leading actress, Zoe Tamerlis Lund, has been a fascination for me for so long. And one of the great blessings about doing this podcast is I've been able to do, up to now, 4 tribute interviews about her. And it's been awesome to be able to do that. And the response I've been getting to these interviews that I've done with Robert Lund has been just terrific, and I'm glad so many people are fascinated with her as well as myself. Well, folks, I bring you today Robert Lund, also celebrating New Year's Eve. How do you do, Robert?
Hello, Greg. Yes, here I am, down in New York City.
New York City?
Yes.
You got snow on the ground there?
No, I think there was a little bit of rain, but no, we're not a real winter yet here.
Gee, you guys want some? We got it.
Oh, thank you. You can keep it up there. In the North Country, yes.
Yeah. I'm just trying to visualize Zoe building a snowman.
She must have at some point. We didn't do that together, though. That's not one of the things we ever did. No.
Yeah, no, that'd be a good Miss 45 moment. She buries the gun in the snowman.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic to have you back on there. How was your Christmas?
Oh, fine. I was driving up from Florida, so I just arrived in New York on Christmas Day. I was on my way back from Texas visiting my son, and I took my time, drove down Florida and up again just to extend a little warm weather before coming back here.
Yeah.
So I had a pretty good Christmas season leading up to it.
Yeah. You know, I understand you listened to the interviews on the way there, on the way back.
Yeah, sure. I thought, let's see what we talked about before. So I listened to all 3 prior interviews.
I enjoyed doing those.
Zoe.
Yeah. Oh, I enjoyed doing those, and yeah, so there's some places where we repeated, but fine, no biggie. But yeah, I also appreciate too, like I got on my flash drive those little written pieces that you've sent me there on Zoe. It's nice to have a little piece of her handwriting.
Oh yes, right, from her diary.
Yeah. Yep, I got those on my flash drive of mine, and yeah, I really appreciate that. I haven't posted those anywhere or anything because I think they're way too private, but it's I appreciate that, So and she's just a fascinating individual, but very tragic as well.
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah, but I guess you're still in touch with her mom, huh?
Well, her mom, I was in touch with her mom. Her mom died last year.
Oh, did she? I did not know that.
Yes, she did pass early last year. She finally did go. She was in the nursing home since 2011, so she had been there, some 6 or 7 years, and then she did finally pass.
How old was she?
Year. She was, let's see, I think she was born in 23, so she would have been about 84, I guess.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
If Zoe had to taken care of herself, she could have done the same.
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, she probably had it in her to last long, but yeah, she let the maintenance go there.
Well, her mom was an artist too, right?
Yeah, she was a very considerable, renowned sculptor.
Oh, yes.
She was a very early worker in welded steel. She got some publicity in the 1950s, she was something of an anomaly. A woman in welding steel was not that common back then. And at the time, she preferred working in steel. She thought, I remember her writing that she preferred steel. When you cast something in bronze, you work in wax, and there are too many processes between your hand and the finished product. It comes out of a mold at a foundry somewhere, and she liked the tactile results of actually working with the steel and bending it and welding it and producing the finished product right in your hands. Now, as the years went by, of course, I guess she saw the benefits of casting, making molds and casting bronze, because much of her later work is cast bronze. And I've got most of her work here at home, pending distribution to various galleries and museums.
Okay. I know we haven't mentioned much about Zoe's father. Is there anything we could say about him?
He was a quiet man. He was a writer.
Okay.
And he owned a bookstore in Manhattan for some years in the 50s, 60s, I think up through the 70s.
Okay.
He had a bookstore in the Village of rare books, and he was working on his novel for all the years I knew him. He was working on his great work, which I don't think it ever got published.
Okay.
He was also an accountant to make money after the bookstore. He was an accountant, did people's taxes and all.
I take it he's gone as well, huh?
He died in the 90s, yes. In 94 he died.
Oh, he died before Zoe passed.
Yes, he passed in about 94.
Okay.
And that's when she got her mother. They had a house up in Mamaroneck, and after the father died, and Zoe convinced her mother to move down to the Village so she could be close to where it's happening, as an artist and all.
Mm-hmm.
I think it probably would have been better for her mother to have kept the house. But Zoe wanted her nearby, too, in order to run in and borrow money from her. She was helping us out a great deal during the lean years there. So her mother wound up moving down to Stanton Street in the Lower East Side.
Okay. Do you know what, I don't know if I asked this before, but either way, I'll rerun it. What her folks thought of her films like Miss 45 and whatnot?
Well, there was that interview by Paul Rackman, who interviewed the mom, Barbara, back in 2009, and she does express some concern in there. I guess Zoe was 17 at the time of the shoot.
Yeah.
So she needed her parents' permission in order to take part in the production. And as Barbara told it, they were very unsure about letting her get involved in such a thing. But Zoe had a way of getting what she wanted. I mean, she insisted that this would be good for her. So they gave her permission to act in that film. Once she saw the film, they had second thoughts. But, I saw Miss 45 with Barbara after Zoe had died. Mm-hmm. They did a retrospective on Zoe at the Anthology Film Archives here. And so we saw a double feature of Miss 45 and Bad Lieutenant back to back. Mm-hmm. I saw it sitting with her mom. I'm sure that must have produced all kinds of emotions in her. Yeah. But back at the time, they were just, they were losing control of their little girl. Zoe was quite advanced in terms of maturity. She had lived by herself. She had moved out and lived with a boyfriend in Manhattan. And about the time of Miss 45, she met Edouard de Leroux, the older man who she was with for 6 years before she hooked up with me. And, this was a 55-year-old man hooking up with a 17-year-old girl.
Ooh.
Parents naturally had some question about that. But, they had a life together for 6 years. She was his assistant. He was her mentor. He was an old revolutionary, and she lived that life with him.
Yeah.
So the parents, they had trouble letting go of their daughter and just seeing her go off in the world and into strange worlds of which they knew nothing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I've read some articles like Zoe was involved in some of these rallies where she's been arrested and whatnot. That must have been very hard on the folks.
Yeah, I believe Barbara told me they attended a rally once. It was on the steps of the New York Public Library at 42nd Street, and there was to be a demonstration there. And Barbara told me about attending it, and seeing her daughter up there with a no nuke sign. Zoe was quite an activist at the time, I mean, she did get arrested. There's that picture of her being carried, arms and legs being carried by a policeman. I think they were protesting at a nuclear plant.
Mm-hmm.
And, she wanted to blow up the reactor at Columbia University.
Oh, gee.
And the boys in her gang were trying to calm her down, She got it. I mean, the way she told it, she had a group of men who were, she was the gang leader, as she described it. She was trying to motivate them to go blow up this reactor at Columbia University, and I guess they thought better of the idea.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because I keep remembering back when I watched Terror in the Isles. That was when I, of course, first got glimpses of Miss 45 and hear all this stuff I'm finding out, and still a fascinating woman. And I've read a lot of the articles that are on her page, and I know you've sent me some articles and whatnot as well. And I read an article where Abel Ferrara, the director of Ms. 45, was being interviewed, and I know that he's made some disparaging remarks about yourself, and there was comments in the article that I got to bring up about you not, like, you wearing a Zoe t-shirt at the screening, and him saying that you don't realize that she had you assaulted or something. Could you clarify that?
Well, I was assaulted. I was robbed in '96. I was coming home from work with my pay. Now, you have to picture, this is the life we lived. We were addicted to heroin.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in '96. I accepted a full-time staff job at MTV Networks. Now, when I was working freelance, I would charge a fairly high rate, and I would get the check and cash it, and I was making more money when I was working freelance. But then they offered me a staff position, which was nice for the security. I'd no longer have to go and look for jobs between consulting jobs. But of course, then they put you on a salary, they deduct taxes. So we wind up making less money when I'm on staff. So the money would last a little less than 2 weeks,
Okay.
When you've got to have it, you tend to use up the 2 weeks worth of money in a fewer days. So by payday, it was already kind of tight. And so I'd get paid up at MTV up there on Broadway. I'd go cash the check, go right downtown at lunchtime. I'd try to pay some rent and, get some more stuff so I could go back to work feeling better. So I was walking home. I had $700 in my shirt pocket. I had gone to pay the rent and the landlord wasn't there. So as I'm walking into the courtyard of my apartment, I saw a guy standing there. He was looking at the front door. I saw him from behind, wearing a long black leather coat. I just walked up behind him. I was heading to the door. Of course, he was looking at this glass door. He was observing my reflection. So that as soon as I was right behind him, he spun around, hit me in the head. I went down. He took the money out of my pocket, $700, and he says, "Where's the rest of it?"
Oh.
I'm laying on the ground. He's over me. He grabs 700s and says, "Where's the rest of it?" I knew that this was not some random robbery. He knew I had more money. And I managed to somehow, with my head bleeding, I can't believe my instincts kicked in. I somehow I knew if I said, "Oh, I swear that's all I got," he was going to search my pants. And I had another 800 in my pants pocket. So instead, I flipped into mode and I put on my little act. I just put on the real junkie whine. "Oh, please, please, please don't take all my money. Please just leave me 10 or 20 so I can get well. Please don't take it all." And he goes, junkie, and he just walked off frustrated. I managed to disgust him, but apparently I acted like someone who really was seeing his last dollar go off. So I did manage to keep the 800 in my other pocket. But this disturbed me that somebody obviously knew I was coming home, getting paid with my pay, and he was expecting more, and I just, for years, I couldn't figure out who could have set me up. The check cashing place, somebody I knew. I mean, it just, and then, compiling the Zoe website, and I'd often, go around to see what's around, and it was 2003, I came across this interview by Gene Gregoritz and Laney Spicer in the Sex and Guts magazine. It's an online movie magazine where they were interviewing Abel about things. Now, Abel had earlier that year, he had done an event at Arlene's Grocery, a club in New York. It was billed as an evening with Abel Ferrara. And this, filled the house, and he got up and just told stories. He didn't usually do this kind of thing, but I heard about this. I certainly went to it, and an evening with Abel. And he was telling stories about, the various films he made. And he discussed Zoe. And I was there. Well, I wore my Zoe T-shirt with the stunning face on it. Mm-hmm. I was standing right up front and in his face, so to speak. And, he noticed that, this guy here, and he called me up at the end. "Hey, you got any stories to add?" And he invited me up to the stage, and I told a few stories. I told about giving her real dope on the set of Bad Lieutenant. I told a couple of inside stories about Zoe. Mm-hmm. He seemed rather friendly. All right, so then in this article later, or Sex and Guts, they asked him about this Arlene Grocery event. Yeah, he says, Abel says, "We just did this show last Sunday." I'm looking at the article now. And, and then he starts talking about me, Zoe's husband, Robert Lund. Yeah, he's exiled. They can keep him exiled. He's sitting there, I'm looking at him, and he's crazy enough looking with the hole in his head. But left him for another guy. Zoe left him for another guy. He didn't even know she was dead. Yeah, I only found out she was dead a couple of weeks after she died because I was out of town. Mm-hmm. She sets him up to get cracked in the skull because she ripped somebody off. And he's kind of mocking me that I'm actually wearing her shirt when she set me up to get robbed. When I saw this, a light bulb went off. I couldn't believe, with all the other deceptions of Zoe's that I have discovered over the years, it just never crossed my mind that she might have been the one to set me up.
Wow.
I don't believe that she thought I was going to get injured. There are ways to rob people without putting holes in their head. Mm-hmm. So that probably surprised her. But it's quite likely that, during a time when we were making less money, I was making less money, and we'd run really low on stuff. Yeah, it's entirely likely that during the day when I'm up at work, she goes to the dealer and gets a couple of bags on credit, get her credit, and she started racking up the debt. And if they're telling her, you got to pay your debt, and she doesn't want to tell me, yeah, it's the kind of thing she would have done. Well, look, he's going to have $1,500 on him, so you can take it from him when he gets home with his pay. and deal with it. That's totally reasonable to think that's what she would have done to get out from under her debt that she had amassed, So, I had been frustrated just thinking, who in the world could possibly have done this, set me up, because I knew it was no surprise when somebody takes 700 and says, where's the rest of it?
Yeah.
So that's what happened. So this bugged me. I read this article. I wanted to talk to Abel about it. And this was 2003.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen him at film festivals. I ran into him in the street once, but he's always, yeah, we got to talk sometime. Yeah, not now. I just never really got to talk to him. So this summer, he's been living in Italy. It's been very hard to get a hold of him.
Mm-hmm.
Just this past summer, he came to New York, and there was a screening of Bad Lieutenant and The Addiction. And I just found out about it while it was actually going on. It was at 7, and I saw a Facebook notice of some friend was going to this event. And I said, holy cow. I dropped what I was doing and ran to New York. And I managed to see him after the Q&A. I went up and, it was wonderful to see him. Because, in the early 2000s, for some years there, I think he was kind of under the drugs habit himself. A number of different times I've seen him at festivals and doing interviews where, he was just so obviously stoned and drowsy. And when I saw him this summer, it was great. It was like two, veterans of the drug force, because he was all, alert and active and clean. And it was just, it was great to see each other and give a big hug and talk about it. And so I asked him about this. I mentioned the article.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned what he said. I said, is this true? Because, it's the kind of thing he might have made up. He could have. But he said, oh, yeah, no, I thought you told me that. I said, Abel, if I told you that, I wouldn't have been surprised to read it. So clearly somebody told him, and it wasn't me. So it must have been her.
Oh.
So, he was familiar with the concept that she set me up. And he thought I told him, but he probably got mixed up. It was she told him. But, yeah, so I kind of confirmed that's what happened, and that's where my hole in my head came from. Thanks, Zoe.
Is that where the hole? Because I noticed you get a dent there right in the middle of your. Is that where that came from?
Yeah, it's not a dent. It's just missing. There's a hole in the skull, so the flesh goes in there. Yeah, the guy hit me. I don't know. He spun around and hit me, and I fell. I'm not sure, but it's the kind of wound that would have come from a blackjack or something like that. He didn't make the hole. He popped me, and he didn't really follow through, so I wasn't unconscious. He kind of gave me a quick tap in the head, and I went down and I was bleeding. But in the hospital, they cut me right across my forehead from left to right and pulled back the skin, and they just took out all the broken pieces of bone that were floating around in there. The bone was all shattered like an eggshell,
Okay.
So imagine just cleaning up and taking out all these broken pieces of bone and sew it up again. So I woke up the next day, I believe, and, I had a bandage, a patch in the middle, excuse me, and, these big stitches, total Frankenstein head. I was pretty shocked. And when they let me out of the hospital, I said, whoa, wait a minute here. You left a hole in my head. And the doctor explained, well, yes, there's no medical reason to fill that in. That's cosmetic surgery if you want to come back. But we couldn't even ask you. You were out. We couldn't get your permission to fill in a hole. He said, when we probe for cancer, we drill holes in the skull. We routinely leave them open. There's no medical problem. There's no issue with you can function with a hole in your skull.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I got this hole in my skull. And since then, of course, I've read about trepanation, which is where ancient societies, going way back all over the world, they used to drill holes in the skull for enlightenment or perpetual high, or like the Incas would drill a hole when you got to the upper caste as an initiation. People have done it all over the world, so I've kept the hole.
Okay.
They say it gives you more blood in the brain because when your cranial cavity is not tightly sealed, it's like a pressure relief valve. There's more room for your blood to flow. You get more blood in your brain. You think more like you did when you were a child and you had an open skull. There are people who believe that everybody should have a hole drilled. I'm not sure about that, but I think I'll just keep mine.
Okay.
So thank you, Zoe.
Yeah, japers. I gotta wonder. You know her better than I would. I gotta wonder. Is there any guilt on her part on this?
Well, I it never came up. When she was alive,
every time she saw that, it's got to be like, I caused this.
It was towards the end. This happened July '96, and by December, January, she was having an affair with this French guy who was staying with us in her mother's house. It was towards the end of the relationship. The relationship was really gone. We were just hanging on, surviving, And this French guy was living in Barbara's apartment with us. And I had no idea they were carrying on, So, and it was, it's a little complicated story. But when I was injured, and I did eventually lose consciousness, and they brought me to the emergency room, and this happened, and Zoe accompanied me. Mm-hmm. And as is appropriate in such situations, it's important to tell the hospital staff that I'm a heroin addict. Oh. They should know this, before they start putting morphine in me or something. They should know that they're dealing with someone whose body is addicted to opiates, It would affect, the kind of drugs they give me or something. Well, not only did it have that effect, but when she told them I'm a heroin addict, I guess it's their drug war state of mind. It's like, oh, heroin, bad. Let's get them down to zero. They want to start with a clean slate. So while I'm unconscious, they shot me full of Naxalone, Narcan, the drug that they talk about these days that you give people when they're ODing. There's this drug that it immediately neutralizes the effects of any opiates in your system. Mm-hmm. So when someone's ODing, you do this to them, it brings them out of it. But when someone's just an addict, with taking a regular amount every day, when you shoot this stuff into them, it immediately cancels out any dope in their system, which means you go straight to like day 2 of cold turkey. That's what happens if you're an addict and you remove the dope immediately from your system, you go into what's known as kicking. So according to the reports of people who were there, I'm laying on the gurney, unconscious, but my arms and legs are all like involuntary muscle contractions, because I'm kicking. Mm-hmm. They gave me the stuff and it worked. Now, you would think that these medical people would see this, and I would think the proper reaction would be, oh, good, it must be working. We gave him the antidote, and look, he's kicking. So I guess we got rid of the heroin in his system. That would be the rational reaction. But instead, they said, ooh, he must be having an epileptic seizure. Oh. I'm sorry. I had no epilepsy, no connection to epilepsy in my life. So they give me this drug called Dilantin. I'm sorry, this is a long tangent, but
Go ahead.
It seriously affected my life with Zoe. I think it accelerated the end times there. They give me Dilantin, which is an anti-seizure drug for epileptics. I've read about this drug since then. I've researched it online, and they don't use it anymore. It had very weird side effects, psychological side effects.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they give me this Dilantin. Not only that, the doctor gives me a bottle of it, prescribes it. I should take every day. So for about a month or more, I was taking Dilantin back at home, mixing it with heroin. I have not been able to find any information on the interaction, but it had side effects. I don't know how I went to work, but yeah, I as Zoe put it later on, I took care of you while you were out of your mind. It turned me into something of a lunatic for a few months there, which probably exacerbated everything, and yeah. So the whole thing played a big part in the breakup, but the breakup was essential in getting my life back. I don't know if she hadn't left, we couldn't have gone on the way we were. It was like I was losing altitude and I was about to do a crash landing. Mm-hmm. And her leaving and my going to detox the next day, it was like I pulled up the stick just before I hit the ground. And, the whole thing, the robbery probably accelerated the breakup, and the breakup enabled me to get off the dope. And, of course, it resulted in her going to Paris and dying. But, yeah, these events all kind of played a part, interlocking over time, and they just came out with this end result here, where we are today.
It's funny you say she took care of you. Well, you were out of your mind. Who took care of her? She was out of her mind.
I guess I wish I had been more of a caretaker with her. But early on, it was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to be together. Heroin's going to be part of the family. So I tried to convince her over the years that we can't live like this. I think she knew we couldn't live like this, but she had a way of, oh yeah, well sure, we can kick, and then what? You want to live the gray life? You'll be longing for it the rest of your life, and it was hard for me to believe that I'd be longing for it the rest of my life. But on the other hand, I was not about to stop doing it and have hurt people. You can't have two. When you have a household where one person is addicted to heroin and one person is not, that's a really unstable situation. Mm-hmm. Most people don't deal with that, especially if one is an ex-addict. I don't think it would have worked for one of us to kick. I mean, our habits were hand in hand. Our monkeys were Siamese twins, We had, one monkey straddling two of our backs, and we all did it together. And at least that's the way I saw it. I realize now she probably often got more during the day when I was at work, But yeah, it determined every aspect of our life.
Well, you did kick it. I mean, you sound great now, and you seem to be doing well now.
Yeah. Oh, of course. To think she said you'd long for it for the rest of your life. Perhaps she would, but I certainly never longed for it. It felt so good to be back in touch. All of life around me was tangible once again. Mm-hmm. When I finally got off of it, and it took me a year of doing small amounts of methadone, decreasing over a year, just to eliminate the sickness. Mm-hmm. But I never took enough methadone to get high. In the drug programs run by the state, they give them 60 to 90 milligram doses a day. Mm-hmm. Their intention is to keep these addicts so stoned on methadone that they won't want to go get some dope. And if you ask them to lower your dosage, this is from people I've known who were in the program. You ask them to give you less, they suspect, you must be getting some dope if you want less methadone, so they give you more methadone. There's no way to get off it. So I never really went with the programs, I bought it from Zoe. She had a big methadone program in Paris, and she would sell me. So I bought it from her and used rather small amounts, 20, 10 milligrams a day, just a little bit in a teaspoon, just to ease myself off it. But yeah, I've never longed for it again. I'm just so glad to have my life back.
Yes, absolutely. Now,
but she probably did long for it.
Yeah.
She went to Paris. They didn't have the kind of money that you need to buy dope, so they got on a methadone program. They were getting large amounts of methadone, and I guess there was a film called the Self-Destruction of Gia.
Okay.
And it's a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And Zoe was involved in writing when he thought it was going to be a drama, but as part of this documentary, they interviewed people who knew Gia, and Gia Caranci was a model, a supermodel, shot to the top, late 70s, early 80s. But she was addicted to heroin, and I guess that's what killed her. So she's a rather tragic figure, and they interviewed people who knew her, and they interviewed other former heroin users. So there's a short bit in this movie of Zoe talking about heroin and describing its effect on you. And this was done, I guess, in 1998, after she had moved to Paris. On one of her visits back here, she did this interview. So I went to see this film when it came out, 2001 or 2, with her mother. And I was prepared to see Zoe talking about heroin the way I remembered her. When she described it, it was always in a very dreamy state, and those long, slender fingers through the air, describing the dreams and the dreamscapes. And it was just, listening to her talk about heroin, it was almost like doing a shot yourself. I mean, you could just get high hearing her voice describe it, Well, then I saw this film, and oh my God, this was the Zoe after she left me. This is the Zoe who's living on cocaine, and she was describing it, but there was a short, curt edge to her voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you do it, and this and that, and it's like, it struck me as a person who's speaking of a deceased loved one. She's talking about heroin. She knows it intimately. She knows what it does, and you could tell this was a person who hadn't gone there in a year or two. So yeah, it was clear that she would have spent the rest of her life longing for it, and getting it. I mean, she knew how to get what she needed. She would have. I don't think she ever would have willingly given it up or been glad to be rid of it. It really had a hold on her.
That's unfortunate. That is really unfortunate. Because there's so many people like I would have loved to have seen her even go on with her film career, and it's like it's so many possibilities in there, and the addiction just cut her off.
Yeah, I think the dream of the Parisian boyfriend, we would talk. She would come back to New York during 97, 98. I saw her several times. I mean, they gave them much too much methadone over there. They had these like 120, 130 milligrams in a bottle. And so she would bring these excess bottles. They didn't have to do it all. She would bring it over here and sell it to people. I know, yeah. Nancy Ferrara used to get it from her. And she would, so she would come over here, sell Paris pharmaceuticals, methadone and other codeine. You could buy codeine over the counter there. So she'd sell these things and then buy some cocaine, stuff it inside herself, and bring it back ostensibly to sell cocaine over there. They were dealing cocaine. Of course, when you have it all in the house and you're doing methadone, the temptation to do some of your product is great. So, yeah, they basically went off the rails intravenously using cocaine over there that they were supposed to be selling. So anyway, that was her routine. So I saw her, you know, a number of times when she'd come over. We'd always get together. We had things, I mean, all of her possessions were in storage, you know, so she needed to get things. I had to accompany her there. We had business. We had things to talk about, you know. And yeah, she was talking about her and Frenchie. They're going to move to the country and have children, you know. So sure of it. Yet, when Barbara went over there, Christmas '98, Barbara visited them in Paris. And yeah, she told me about how she spent New Year's Eve. They just went in another room of the apartment and they just stayed in there. You know, when people shoot cocaine, you go off into this crazy space and the whole world ceases to exist. So Barbara told me her experience of being over there in the living room. Zoe and Richard are off in the next room and they're shooting cocaine in there, just going nuts, whatever you do, spinning your wheels. But and she couldn't get their attention. You know, she spent the whole day and night alone while they're off in the next room doing cocaine. And yeah, Barbara told me she didn't think that was going to last long. Zoe was beginning to see through this. He was very controlling, very, you know, when she got over there, he got her to cut her hair short and dye it blonde because he preferred blondes.
Oh,
but she was never a blonde before.
And she looked better with either dark hair or red hair.
Yeah, and I think she normally had brownish hair, and then she started with the brightest auburn. I knew I would buy it for her at the CVS, but yeah, she had a consistent color red to her hair. It just became her color.
I liked it. Yeah.
She went over there, and he got her to. No, you cut your hair. No, you go blonde. You know, and he basically told her how yeah, he was a very controlling. I remember I had made a tape. You know, this was the late '90s, so we didn't have MP3s to send around to iPhones. So I made a mixtape. I considered it like the soundtrack to the Bob and Zoe movie, the Robert and Zoe movie.
Okay.
You know, it was just a mixtape. It was a whole bunch of songs, but if you listen to all the songs in order, they kind of describe the phases of our relationship, you know, and just different songs I knew. It was a mixtape. So I gave her this tape. Oh, she had nothing to listen to. I bought her a Walkman. Okay. So one of her visits, I gave her a Walkman. I gave her a tape. And then next time I say, did you listen to the tape? Oh, I couldn't listen to it. We only have one set of earplugs. What? Like, she wasn't able to listen to a Walkman with the headphones on because he would insist that you had to have, you know, he had to be listening at the same time. And then I had my life back. I was fine. And I could see that she was under his thumb, you know. The fact that you're not able to listen to a tape because you only have one set of headphones, you would go listen in the bathroom, something, you know, anything. And then he wouldn't let her, you know. Yeah, it seemed that things were falling up. Her mother thinks they would have broken up because they fought so much, and he didn't let her go to the doctor, you know. And
well, he sounded like a real dick.
Yeah, just, you know what. I mean, when you're doing intravenous cocaine, you really get paranoid crazy. He wouldn't let her go. I mean, her mother, Barbara, told me she was on the phone with Zoe when Zoe was sick. She was over there and called her mother. I'm worried, I'm sick, I'm this and that. And he's in the background. You don't love me. You just want them to find out who we are. Because he was afraid if you go to the hospital, they're going to find out our identities and cover for us, you know. And, so she only went to the hospital when it became a dire emergency. and then she signed it as Zoe X. I went over, I guess that later that year I visited Paris to try to get some of her things, and I went to the hospital to find out the circumstances of her death. They wouldn't show me any records, even next of kin can't see records. I guess I wanted to know her condition when she died. One of the things she spoke about very often in life was Billie Holiday.
Okay.
Now this is another, just as we have all many people out there, they revere and worship Zoe, the queen of heroin and all. Well, with Zoe, Billie Holiday represented that to her. Billie Holiday was a famed junkie who was really abused by the state. She was arrested. She was put in a hospital. They wouldn't let her anything near her. They wouldn't let her. And she basically died kicking, okay? So this was a thing that weighed very heavily on Zoe. And one of the things she always talked about was, whenever I die, I sure hope I'm not kicking dope, to be that miserable when you die, So I guess I wanted to know if they were giving her any methadone in the hospital. Did she die kicking or did she die peacefully,
Did she die in the hospital?
Yeah, she died in the hospital. She was in the hospital. They thought she would get better, and she had some sort of staph infection in her lungs, but it spread to her heart and other organs. It spread throughout her body and killed her. Oh. And so I spoke to the doctor, and I explained this to him. Once I'm asking for her at the hospital, nobody knew it. And then finally one of the clerks said, Zoe X, oui. She remembered Zoe X. So then the doctor, I had a talk with her physician, who assured me that she was sedated and she died peacefully. But, what do I know? I don't know. At the time, I was just, I kind of wanted to know what condition she was in when she passed,
Wow.
So, yeah.
Is this piece of work she was with still alive?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, when I was over in 99, I managed to get him. I went to their apartment, knock on their apartment. I thought he might still be there. And this was back in 99. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fall of. She died in this April, and I went over in September. And so I'm knocking on their door, and the next door neighbor opened the door. A woman opened and said, "Oh no, I can't." She didn't speak English, so this was rough. I managed, but my French is not that fluent. But she invited me in for a cup of tea and told me stories about how after Zoe died, Frenchie was in there just like doing coke by himself, screaming, dying. He was just, he was ODing in such a way that alarmed this woman. She called the police, and they came, and his father came and moved him out. But yeah, she basically saved his life because he was on the way down after Zoe was dead. So anyway, I'm there in 99, and she told me, no, he went back to his parents' house back in Bourges. He had a parents lived down in Bourges, down south of Paris. So I called, and I guess because his mother, had been very friendly with Barbara. Barbara went over there in the spring to deal with the body, to identify her and to have it cremated. And apparently Frenchie's mother was very sympathetic to her, couldn't believe that her son, good for nothing, had been with such a beautiful, wonderful woman. She was trying, Anyway, so I called the mother, and old Richard, he could tell the mother was on the phone with me and took the phone. Robert, she make a big mistake with you, 10 years. Now all her things are mine. Do not call again. Boom, hangs up. Oh, I see. He's claiming all her stuff. She had a lot of stuff that we wanted.
I'd say she made a big mistake with him.
Yeah, clearly. I was probably the straightest guy she was ever with. I mean, he was like a street urchin, you know. He was a scam artist and not good at it. So then in 2009, 10 years later, I was over in Paris again. And so I drove down to Bourges and I visited. Now I go to the house and I visited his mother and had a long talk with her. She assured me, oh, no, he has no more of her things. They're all gone. No, no, no. But she was very familiar with ZoeLund.com, and she was very, you know, she was internet savvy. She knew about the website and all this stuff. I don't know. She gave me a whole spiel of how, you know, she was sorry for everything that happened and all. And Richard was away with his wife. He was married and he was away. But no, he didn't have any of her things. Well, then a few years later, the people from Cinémathèque de Paris got in touch with me because one of the things that Richard kept, when Zoe went to Paris in '97, she brought along a film. She had cut out footage from all this of Edward's footage that we had saved. Mm-hmm. When Edward lost the loft that they lived in, right, back in '86 or '87, he lost the loft. And all of his boxes of film that didn't get used, outtakes, planned movies, oh, it's all going to the dumpster. And we said, oh, no way. We got a friend with a van, a truck, and we had 20 boxes of films from the 60s and 70s of Edward's scenes shot on 35 millimeter, mostly black and white, that he intended to use for films and never got to it. So we got this film and kept it in the apartment. We had a big apartment. I had on 10th Street. I had a large apartment. I had a room full of 20 boxes of films. And when the rats were living in the house, the rats were hanging out, living on top of these boxes. So at some point, I realized the rats had pissed on all the film. Oh. So I actually went through this 20 boxes of film and took each roll out and wiped them off and rolled them up again. I had gone through this entire 20 boxes of film and cleaned the film up to piss. And, you know, because I had promised Edward, I will preserve your film and make sure it gets seen by the world, you know? It was like I had made a verbal promise to him. But I had transferred some of it to videotape. But, so all this film wound up at Anthology Film Archives in New York, which is headed by Jonas Mekas, who was a friend of Edward's, a Lithuanian filmmaker. Mm-hmm. They were friends back in the 50s. And so this stuff resided there. And she had cut up pieces of original footage and made it into a sample reel. And she showed it in Paris and spoke about him back in '97 when she went there. Mm-hmm. So this film, original footage of Edward's highlights, was there. So Cinémathèque de Paris called me, you know, in like 2012 or 13, you know how to get a hold of this guy, Frenchie, you know, Richard. Yeah, I gave them his info. And sure enough, he still had the film. I forget, he wanted something like 2,000 euros. So I heard that he had the film. And that's when I asked the person from Cinémathèque de Paris, listen, if you're negotiating with this guy, ask him if he has that book of dope bags, you know, that we had an album, I might have mentioned before.
Yeah.
Zoe and I saved an album with those different dope bags, so they were all stamped. And yeah, sure, he had the dope bags too. So I paid him 400 euros for that and got that back. But they got this film back from him too. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what else he has, but there were some sculptures of barbers that she had taken. But I've finished trying to pursue him. I got my bag. Got my book of bags. They brought the film over and they showed the film that Zoe had cut. They showed it at Anthology Film Archives, So it's back with the other 20 boxes of film once again. I at some point, I guess they'll archive that. So that's where it all ended up with Frenchie.
Yeah. He was a real piece of work.
Real piece of work. After his mother assured me he had nothing, of course he wanted to save it, and he wound up making some money off it, just as he had hoped.
Yeah. Well, I like how he blames you, and really, he really was a trailblazer towards her death, really.
Well,
I mean, it's obviously her own fault, but he didn't help matters. I mean, you kicked it.
Yeah, no, I think at the end of 2 years over there, she was getting. It was Barbara's perception is that Zoe was reaching a point where she was going to be seeing through this,
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't live long enough to come out the other side of that bad relationship. It was bad. I mean, he lived with us. I met this guy. I brought him into her life. It was the summer of '96. Yeah, after I got smashed in the head.
Mm-hmm.
I was out, in the '90s, it got harder and harder to find dope in the streets. Mayor Giuliani was cleaning it up. You had to have somebody's number, you'd call a beeper and they would call you back and then you'd make arrangements. But there were no dope spots. There was no more lines, go line up outside a building and distribute. That was shut down. So I'm out walking, and Frenchie was walking, came up to me on the street, walking beside. Hey, you look for something? Hey, I can help you, He had a phone number to call. So I gave him my money. He bought some stuff, got himself one bag out of the deal, and I remember telling, oh, you should meet my wife. She she loves French people.
Jay.
Sure. Oh, my wife would love you. Sure, yeah, right. So we met him, and then he lived around the corner on Clinton Street with a girlfriend,
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie. That was her name, Stephanie. I don't know, did we do this, the Geraldo Rivera tale? I don't remember if we've gone through that.
I don't recall right now.
So there's Frenchie. And, it got to be a routine. When I wanted something, I would go around the corner to Clinton Street. Hey, Frenchie, here. I'd give him some money. I would stay in the apartment with his girlfriend, who was trying to get a rise. I mean, he'd go off and get some stuff, and come back, and he'd wind up with a bag for himself, and we'd get some, Now, Stephanie, his girlfriend, was, she was not an addict with a capital A. She was one of these compulsive drug users. I think she got high, but she didn't really have a serious heroin habit where she'd need to kick. But she was fond of coke, and she was just a miserable person, former topless dancer from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So in September of '96, apparently the Geraldo Rivera production company got in touch with Zoe, and they wanted her. He would often he had a talk show, and he would get some person with problems and save them, right? I think he sent Mickey Rooney's son. He sent him off to rehab and got him all better. So he was looking for someone to save. This is showbiz. So he got Zoe. Will you recruit someone from the street and bring them on my show, and I'll send them away to rehab? Okay.
Why not do it with Zoe?
Yeah, Zoe, street expert. So I remember she went into Tompkins Square Park, this park on the Lower East Side where a lot of, lowlifes would hang out, and she was interviewing people, and it dawned on her, hey, we got somebody who's screwed up right here, his girlfriend Stephanie. So it was agreed that Frenchie's girlfriend Stephanie would go on Geraldo Rivera, and Zoe would come on as a former drug user, with all her experience. In fact, she brought the book of bags along with her. I remember I was at the taping, and Geraldo Rivera's on his feet, and he looks at this bag and he goes, wait a minute, are these are actual glassines that heroin would come in, and without batting an eyelid? Yes, I have many friends who are junkies. It's kind of like I give them a few bucks and they give me their empty bags. It's kind of like return on a deposit for your empties, and this way I managed to collect. She totally acted like a former user who collected these bags from her junkie friends, for a few bucks. I'm sitting right there. I wanted to rate. No, I'm the one who went out in the street and got all those bags. But anyway, so Geraldo Rivera, they got Stephanie crying on the air, and I'm so fucked up. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
And they sent Stephanie away to some rehab in Kentucky. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now Frenchie's all alone in the apartment on Clinton Street, and I think she was the one who was working. So he loses the apartment. We still need him because, he's our connection. I give him money. He goes and buys dope. I didn't know I had no contacts with dealers by 97. So 96 this was. So he loses the apartment. We had already lost our apartment. We were living in a single room in Barbara's little apartment. We were living in a room. And so, yeah, okay, you come live with us. So we put a mat on the floor. He's out in the hallway right in front of the entrance door. He's got a foam mat, and he's sleeping on the floor out there. So this guy moved in with us like sort of late September, and he lived in Barbara's apartment with us for the end of 96 there. And at some point they got involved. I didn't know. I couldn't stand him. I thought he was a jerk. He was a bad liar. He's always scamming, always looking for some way to cheat people, but just he would tell stupid lies, lies that where you could easily get caught. Oh, we can deal with that tomorrow, just that kind of stuff. And she managed to convince me that she hated him too. Oh, he's such a pain in the ass. Oh, he's this and that, just keeping the front up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
wow.
And she was planning to go to Paris to show this film of Edwards, and then I finally found out, no, she's going, and he's going with her, and they're not coming back. That's how that all came about.
So you didn't kick them out?
No. I was living with her mother. We were living with her mother, and one day I find her, I wake up in the morning, and she's on the floor in the hall with this guy, and I'm like, what's going on here? I think I grabbed her by the ankle and pulled her into our room. And he got up and said, hey, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And he punched a hole in the glass window there, And so that's when we had our big talk. No, we're going to Paris, and I'm staying there. I'm not coming back. What? This one day, the whole plan fell to pieces. So I left the next day. I mean, it was not my house. I'm living with her mother. She's got a new boyfriend, so I'm out. I went to detox and went to hotels and went on my way.
Yeah, and
she went to Paris. Yeah,
and went on a very bad way.
Well, I I got my life back. She went over and lost hers.
Yep.
So
yeah, you benefited.
And I got out of detox after a week. She went, I moved out. 2 days later, she and he went to Paris. I left her mother's house on a Monday. On a Tuesday, her mother would always take a train to Philadelphia to teach a course.
Mm-hmm.
So Barbara's out of town for a day. So Frenchie and Zoe, they're trying to get money to go to Paris. So they took some furniture out of Barbara's house, some old antique bureau chest, family heirloom chest of drawers and all, took it down to Houston Street to the antique dealer and got a few $100. Barbara comes home from Philly on Tuesday night and finds family heirloom furniture gone. These people have gone and pocketed so they get their plane tickets.
Wow.
And they went to Paris Wednesday. So Barbara got burned. A number of other people got burned. She was in the middle of stuff with people. Her lawyer, we had this attorney who she met him down at the criminal courts, and he would get us out. He represented us every time we get busted. He was a criminal attorney, but he was really tired of that, and he really wanted to get into showbiz. So he started acting as her attorney, on business matters, scripts and contracts and all that. She just vanished. Didn't tell him, when she vanished on everybody without telling anybody anything, except for me, So I get out of detox a week later. It just happened to be the February. So I got out, I got my paycheck, and I got my $8,000 bonus for the year. This was on staff at MTV. I got my bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using it. Well, and she knew I was getting the bonus. So she called me from Paris, telling me that they were in a car, and she was driving, and they had an accident. Car flipped over, blah, blah. Frenchie got his arm broken. He's in the hospital. Oh, and she plays on my prejudice, Oh, you know how the French are.
Yeah.
So now he doesn't want to be with me anymore because I was so stupid and I broke his arm and blah, blah, so we're breaking up. So I want to come home again, And I'm like, excuse me, but there is no home. You want to talk, you come back, we'll talk, but don't think you have a home to come back to. Your mother, after what she did to her mother,
yep,
etc. But she told me, you're coming home, but I need money. I need this. And so I sent her a bunch of money. And then she calls me a few days later. Oh, I got sick. I had to go to the hospital. I think I had a miscarriage. She's telling me she had a miscarriage. So that means you must have started with this guy like months ago. Oh, nice. And then she found a new drug, Subutex. A new drug. It's not like methadone. It doesn't mess you up. You take these pills. You don't want dope anymore. You're going to want some. I'm going to bring it back to you. Send me a few hundred. I'll get some Subutex. Anyway, I'm sorry. That is just over the next month, she managed to get, I got all the papers, but I Western Union her like $4,800, she got more than half of my bonus, wound up getting sent to Zoe over there. And I got friends telling me, Robert, don't listen to her. She's got friends. She's sitting right there next to her. And I'm like, oh, no, she wouldn't go that far,
Apparently she did.
I mean, somehow, we spent time on the phone. She's all contrite and sorry and wants to work things out. And it was all just total fabrication just to get my money out of me. And there always some problem, always sending her a few more hundred. This time I'm coming. Yeah, she really ended it in style.
Tell me, what's the
final squeeze? Okay.
Whose idea was it for her to be cremated? Was that hers?
Hers?
Yeah.
No, I guess that's what they do over there.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe her mother did it, or she was going to be, disposed of anonymously. She signed in as Zoe X to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They told the boyfriend, you must return, when she died, you got to bring her ID in. Well, he's not going to bring her ID in. He stays home and does coke for weeks. So they had this body with no ID, and it was going to be disposed of in the anonymous way, whatever they had, Potter's Field or something. So her friend, Catalina, who is now deceased, how did she know? Catalina knew Abel Ferrara. I think she knew her through Abel. But Catalina was a photographer, lived in Paris, was a friend of hers, knew Richard, and I guess she was in touch with the mother. So Barbara then flew over, maybe like 2 weeks after Zoe died. Barbara flew over there, and Catalina acted as interpreter and helped Barbara, deal with the forms and the body and get it cremated. And they went together and dumped the ashes in the Seine, right at the Pont des Arts, right across from the Louvre there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And, Yeah, I visited Catalina in 2009. And, she brought me to the place, right, the spot where they dumped the ashes, etc. And they had to hide the ashes. Once they had the ashes, they had to hide them, conceal them, because Frenchie wanted to take them. He wanted to keep the ashes. No. You don't get. Yeah, they had a lot of trouble with him when Barbara was over there, just keeping the ashes out of his hands.
Yeah, you don't need him to have them.
Frenchie.
Yeah. No, what was I going to say? Going back to Abel Ferrara, I mean, when he mentions in that article, the boyfriend should, like yourself, should be exiled. Why the hostility out of Abel towards you in that article?
Well, the year before, back in 2002, there had been an interview in the New York Press.
Okay.
The New York Press was a local paper in New York, covered the arts and various things. And they had a Q&A with him. He was having a new film come out, Our Christmas.
Okay.
About Our Xmas. It was about a couple lived in the Bronx, but they dealt heroin. So they were trying to be dealers, supplement their income, but they had a child and they lived in the Bronx, and the guy would travel downtown and do. Anyway, it was a movie like this about their Christmas and what it was like. So the New York Press interviewed him and talked about his history and what have you. It was mostly about the new movie. But they covered his history a bit, And as I recall, they mentioned Bad Lieutenant. They talked about the 70s, Driller, Ms. 45, kind of mentioned in the same breath, So I read this. Now, granted, please understand, this was only like 3 years after her death. So, as Abel mentioned in the Guts article, like he's walking around like that's still my girl. I mean, with all the positive and negative things, I guess I was a little more attached back then. I mean, I wore the shirt. I don't wear the Zoe T-shirt anymore much, but I would wear it from time to time. And so I read this, and I was struck by the total omission of Zoe's name.
Okay.
So I wrote the following week, I wrote a letter to the editor. Remember those? You write a letter to the editor.
Yep.
And then they published the letter. And with the headline, Abel Ferrara disses a sister. I mean, I wasn't complaining that Abel didn't mention her, but I guess it was a letter to the editor, like, how could you not, ask him about Zoe? How could you leave out that, And, yes, I guess my letter, I was pointing out what a significant part she had played in his career.
Yep.
And I did mention that, the initial deal with Bad Lieutenant specified joint writing credit. It was written in spite of him as opposed to with him. And, I spoke about, she'd work on the script in the day. She'd go over and visit Abel and then come home 5 a.m. all frustrated trying to get him to pay attention, etc. I put this stuff in a letter to the editor. I didn't occur to me that it might get printed the following week. And Abel read the letter. I mean, the response to me was, John Strasbaugh replied, the late Zoe Lund was indeed a rare screen presence, and her performances deserve the cult following they've developed. In our interview, we focused much more on Ferrara's new film, which may explain why her name didn't come up. Of course, it's totally, looking back at it now, there's no reason why her name had to come up, when they're talking about his new film. But anyway, Abel saw this and naturally took great offense at it. So I became persona non grata. He would see me, the enemy,
Yeah.
Even though at the Arlene Grocery event, he got past that and invited me up to the stage to tell stories as well. But things were cold between us for a while there. It's worn off now, of course, but that accounts for why he said I'm exiled. I think he took it as a betrayal. My letter to the editor was taken as something of a betrayal, I suppose.
Okay. Well, I know when we were talking privately, some of the notes I took down here, you had mentioned a funny story. Well, I guess it wasn't funny at this time, but where you were both arrested together.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Normally, I mean, I got arrested going out to buy dope. Between 87 and 92, I got arrested 7 times.
Okay.
And typically, these were the years when there'd be a dope spot. You'd know where the dealer would hang out, or either was in a building, or sometimes they'd show up on a corner. But you'd go and hang around and find out where he was and try as furtively as possible, go and do your exchange and put the bags in your pocket and go home. But the police would quite often stake out a block where there was a known dealer. And rather than swoop down and arrest the dealer, they would sit across the street, on a rooftop with binoculars. And one by one, they'd pick off the customers who go and buy the dope. You'd get them a block away. Hey, what do you got there? Let's go in the back of the car, handcuffs,
Mm-hmm.
That was the routine. And, well, yeah, I don't, other than one time before we started doing it, Zoe got busted once. But I think one of the rare times she came along with me, I guess we had nothing in the morning. And so the routine would be we'd get some, and I'm on my way to work. So we'd buy some, and I'd leave some with her and take some to work with me. So we were actually out together downtown. And let's see, we bought the stuff, I was carrying it, and the cops saw us. And it was just before I got in the subway, they came over, swooped down, and grabbed me. They found the stuff on me. I gave her my bag. I had a briefcase. I was going to work, and so they caught me with the stuff on me. I handed her my briefcase so I wouldn't take that to jail, and they put me in the car. So now they're cruising around the neighborhood, looking for more victims. And Zoe, instead of going right home, Zoe was also cruising around the neighborhood hoping she could, whatever, get something on credit, find a friend, borrow some money. I don't know. She didn't leave the area. So I'm driving around in this police car in the back seat, and I'm hearing them talk on the radio. Yeah, the redhead's still there. And, I tried to tell them, no, leave her. She has nothing. They arrested me. They didn't arrest her. Leave her alone. She's not doing anything. She's got no money. She can't do anything. She's just, hanging out. But they did wind up swooping down on her. And in my briefcase that I handed her, my works were in there. My needle and spoon and little kit, my little kit was, so it was, my stuff was in my briefcase that she was carrying, and they arrested her for that, for possession of paraphernalia. So there she comes, and they put her in the back seat with me. So the two of us got brought to jail together, which was always more difficult. I mean, the routine was I'd go to jail at least, and after, it's a process of maybe 30 hours or more. You get arrested, they bring you to the precinct, you get printed and all this stuff. And by evening time, they put you in another van. They bring you to some precinct uptown to sleep. Mm-hmm. And then you're uptown overnight. And that's where, you start the kicking starts kicking in, the limbs, all that stuff. And then in the morning, they put you all in another van and they bring you down to the Tombs, down in the criminal courts building, mm-hmm. where they have large cells in the basement, maybe 30 guys in a cell. And they pile you in there, and you shivering on the floor under a bench. By the time you get to see a judge, you're just shaking and sick. Yeah, whatever you say, and you get out. And you go home and your wife has a dose waiting for you, hopefully, because you're sick. You know, that's the routine, if you can say there's a routine to going through the system.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's the two of you, of course, not so good. No one at home. So, you know, you both get out of jail in 30 hours sick, and then you got to find some money and find some stuff. And so it was a little more inconvenient when you both get arrested at the same time.
They didn't put you two in a cell together?
Oh, no, they split up that's back where they still recognize the difference between males and females.
Okay.
So, no, you had your own cells.
Well, you two were married, so that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, we married, but we didn't have conjugal,
Oh.
no conjugal cells. You're in a cell with 30 guys, and she's
Okay.
30 girls, mostly the hoes, you know. They're, the girls, they have different types of offenses in there.
Okay.
I mean, in the 80s, I guess I'd be in, and there'd be several other people. They'd go out and they'd sweep up a whole bunch of people buying dope, and you'd be in there with a bunch of other people in similar circumstances. By the early 90s, there wasn't so much street action. So I found myself in a cell with a bunch of wife beaters and turnstile jumpers and various other people who had far less sympathy for some sick junkie among them. You know, nobody likes to be stuck in a cell with somebody who's sick from dope. So it got worse before it got better. And then, you know, the rest of the 90s, I didn't get busted again after 92. I was more careful, and it was more covert. It was, you know, you wound up one-to-one hooking up with people by phone and things.
Well, she's gone to Paris and whatnot, you know, and I know we talked about this, and like I asked if you guys ever vacationed anywhere, and if you did, where did you like to go? And you told a funny story, ended off in a field. Please tell that story.
Well, we didn't really go anywhere on vacation. I mean, we went on our honeymoon. We drove down to the Blue Ridge Mountains and back. That was pretty early in the process. But basically, I didn't have a car. We'd borrow a car. One time we did go to Toronto. It wasn't really a vacation, but we drove. Her mother, Barbara, had a show in a Toronto gallery, and she wasn't going up, so we took a whole bunch of sculpture pieces in the back of Mom's station wagon and agreed to deliver it up to a gallery up in Toronto. And, you know, we get in the car. I mean, before the trip, we did our morning dose, you know. But driving up the New York Thruway, apparently both of us nodded out at the same time. Because I'm driving up the Thruway, and suddenly I'm rudely awakened by the bumpy ride. We're driving across a field. I mean,
it's a good thing it was a field.
Not funny. I mean, you're driving on the Thruway at high speed, you know, and think about leaving the road at any random point. I mean, plenty of places there's a deep ditch. Plenty of places you could hit an overpass and hit a wall. It's rather rare to find a place where you can just leave the roadway and travel smoothly, relatively smoothly, without rolling or hitting something. But this particular point of the road was chosen just to teach us a lesson. Because I went off the road at full speed and was driving, you know, out in a field, and boom. We woke up and I stopped. And we're out, you know, quite a ways from the road. And we just looked at each other in such horror. I do believe the tears came to both our eyes. We were not laughing. This was serious. And, I gripped the wheel tight, and no more nodding out on that trip. It's the number of times I could have been dead in this whole periods there are startling, and I just managed to make it through that one.
Yeah, you made it through ultimately as well.
Yeah. I just, it's, it all ended over 20 years ago, but, yeah, it's sometimes hard to believe the life that we lived, the adventures, what became normal, the kinds of hardships that became routine to accept.
Yeah, next year will mark the 20 years since her passing. I just thought of that.
Yeah, April, it'll be 20 years she's gone.
20, yes, absolutely. Well,
Think
yeah.
of Zoe at 57. I don't know what kind of 57-year-old she would have been. Would she have come to her senses? Would she have come around? Would she be out there with a pussy hat on, celebrating Antifa? I don't know. I can't be sure. She was a very smart woman.
Yeah.
It's impossible to tell if she would have clung to her revolutionary ideals or not,
Yeah.
Some people surprise you,
Yeah.
Can't tell.
Never know. I might have had her on here.
Oh, I'm sure you would have. Yeah, she probably would have. Zoe on Facebook. I don't know. She died just before the internet was taken off. Yeah, we did email, but there was no thought of websites or anything like that. So she kind of left the world just before the whole cyber reality became commonplace.
Could you imagine her on Dr. Phil or Dr. Drew?
Oh, Dr. Phil. I've never seen that show, the Geraldo Rivera's show. I gotta track that down. It was on CBS, but then when he left CBS, he took all his archives with him, and I haven't tracked him down to see if I could get a copy of that show. I've never seen as it was broadcast. I haven't seen that.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I did get to see on her website, and I was happy to finally see it, was her, I wouldn't call it a masterpiece, Exquisite Corpses.
Exquisite Corpses.
Oh, boy. Like a cross between Midnight Cowboy and Cabaret, with none of the quality of those films.
Right. It's always struck me like the high school play. It just, somehow the acting is it's just not convincing. It's so clearly acting, posing. And, that was a style. If you think about the club life of the 80s, there was a whole lot of posing going on. A whole lot of just stylish talk, not from the heart. So that's a theme through that whole film that's kind of unreal, implausible. But she did do that song and dance in there.
Have your cake and eat it too. Yeah,
have your cake and eat it too. You know, and she wrote the lyrics to that.
Okay.
Let's see. I've got it here. I played my cards quite wisely, and I cheated when I could. Now I'm here, and all the world's my game. I've left my past behind for good. I've heard tell of social justice and other boring stuff. Don't tell me I'm without a heart. My sex and money are enough. This was, 1987? So it was like the first year of our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, I got a little queasy. She wrote this song and she performs it in the movie. I guess over the years it became clear of just how much from the heart. That's really was a large part of her philosophy. Being the first year of marriage, I didn't have my cynicism, wasn't it? You see, the good guys are forgotten and the bad guys are on top. I guess the good guys couldn't keep it up, so give me more bad guys on top. Oh, like a real slut. This is the song she came up with for that character, and I think she was rather comfortable playing that character. The song is very telling.
Yeah, I remember her doing that little number, and then the two fellas moving in front of her, and then her hands come in between, and
right.
Yeah. No, I found the acting in it was, let's put it this way, the lead was no John Voight from Midnight Cowboy. And he certainly was no Joel Grey from Cabaret either.
No, it was a funny little crew there. Lots of people. There's that party scene where lots of friends of mine are in there. I recognize people at the party, just extras. And I mean, even put me in it as the club owner. Just
yeah, I saw that
momentarily. I'm just smirking, and I think I may. Well, you think we can use this guy? I think I had one line or something. Yeah.
I didn't know Zoe could dance and stuff like that either, Of course, then again, she does do that little bit there at the beginning of special effects, so I guess that wasn't coming to my mind as I was...
Right, that was more, that was just standing there, wasn't really a dancer. But this one, she did, she was a composer. She didn't compose the music. Gary Knox, the other lead, the male lead, the cowboy, he composed the music for this, and I guess whatever else. Yeah, he did the music for the film, and she provided the lyrics.
Okay.
Cha 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 chi 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 cho cho cho. Yes.
What is Gary Knox doing now? I never heard of him before.
I don't know.
I was amused with him, I'll say that.
Yeah, it's pretty amusing.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so much, like I said, Midnight Cowboy Cabaret. It was just, and the film had none of the quality of either of those films, but nonetheless, huh?
No, you got some good scenes of gritty New York, Lower East Side back in the late '80s. It's certainly, it's a reminder of what the streets were like. It's so it's so gentrified now. It's so that just tall hotels going up, replacing tenements, and but there you get that's the scene, the New York streets of the '80s.
Yeah, I just wanted to see Zoe, and it was nice to see her. I wish she had done more films, and less drugs and more films. That's how I wish it had gone,
Yeah.
Yeah. But nonetheless, here we are on New Year's Eve, the last day of 2018. What's your plans for New Year's?
Oh, plans? Another year? Just like the past one. I mean, I've got a number of things to get together. I want to finish. There's that book on the book of bags, the dope bags. I've got an agreement with a publisher now to get that out with some descriptions that she wrote of the description that Zoe had written when she was intending to publish the book, all about the Lower East Side underground bag art scene. She describes that, and I'll put it all in context, but it's quite an artifact, especially for people who've ever used it or shopped back then. There's like nearly 300 brand names, which, someone sees a brand name and it flashes them back to a street corner. So there's that. And there's the Barber's sculpture. I hope to get those distributed and placed in galleries and or museums who are willing to take them. There are a number of places that are willing to take them. I've got to work on that. And, spend more time with my family in Texas.
Well, I'm happy you got a good relationship there. You seem happy there.
Oh, yes. I'm very, yes. I'm not moving down there, not yet. I'm still kind of stuck in New York, but I've been spending a lot more time down there, and my grandsons are getting older.
Mm-hmm.
God, yeah, this little boy will be 14 this next month.
Mm-hmm.
So they're turning into young men right before my eyes.
Yeah. Hard to believe Zoe was only 37. I think that article somewhere, I don't know whether it was Abel or who it was. I don't know. I don't want to misquote anybody. Said she was in her 40s when she died. No, she was 37.
Yeah, I think it was that interview you spoke about. He mentioned that she died at 40, but he got his numbers mixed up.
Yeah, because she was 10 years older than me. She was born in 62. I was born in 72. So, yeah. So, no, that's tragic. But, you know, you're welcome to put these interviews on her website, you know, if you want to. You got my permission.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure they're linked. Yeah, actually, they're all. I have links to them all. You put them on YouTube when you're when you got them ready. Yeah. I should actually post the collection. Right.
Yeah.
I haven't worked on her website. You know, I made it in 2001, and you know, it looks like a 2001 website. I've really got to reorganize it, and redesign it, bring it up to modern standards. But I mean, so yeah, I haven't really added much to it. Here and there, you know, I put on the Exquisite Corpses film, but it needs some major overhauling.
Oh, I think Exquisite Corpses needed some major overhauling.
Yes, right. I know the pictures, you know. I mean, when you scan pictures back in 2001, you know, 640 by 480 was a real, and that was the size of our screen, you know. So now all the pictures look kind of small, but, you know, I've got to dig them out and rescan them at high res. So people screen with these beautiful shots, you know. But I'll get it there. And, yeah, we should have all these interviews.
Yeah, because I've enjoyed doing these, you know. Like, it's nice to make her part of the show and share this fascination. I'm glad you're willing to talk to me about them, that you trust me. That's very much appreciated. In fact, it's interesting.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because we mentioned special effects, and I forgot about this, but I had Steve Mitchell on earlier this year, and he, of course, was the director of King Cohen, this Larry Cohen documentary he made. And he voiced the fact, we talked a little bit about special effects, and he was saying that, you know, he would have loved to have had Zoe as part of that documentary. He said he voiced that he felt bad that she was gone, but he touched upon that film in that documentary, I guess. I haven't seen it yet.
And sorry, what's it called?
It's called King Cohen.
King Cohen.
Like,
yeah, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I had Steve Mitchell. You know, he was involved with movies like Chopping Mall and stuff like that. Well, he directed this, and he was put in touch with me through somebody else, and so we talked about this film, and we talked a little bit about Zoe and special effects, and yeah, which, you know, Larry Cohen's done a lot of interesting films, and special effects was certainly one of his better films, I think. I enjoyed it.
Yes, it's good.
Yeah.
Got Eric Bogosian in there, and
Yep. But of course,
Rain.
Yeah.
Brad Rain is the other one, the husband.
Yeah. And of course, Bad Lieutenant. I love her red hair in that, gotta say. And of course, Miss 45, my favorite of her films, and I wore that one on my trip to Toronto this year as well. So it was, yeah, happy to promote that film. But anyway, yeah. But you know what? We made quite a good time on this interview, you know. I only had these 5 points to talk about, and we're closing in, looking at the time here, 100 minutes on this interview. Not bad, huh?
Oh, my. Well, look at that.
Yeah, not...
Once you start, you know, I know we spoke less about cinematic issues and more on the personal life of the heroine, but that was such a large part of what fueled her life during that time. So I guess we spend a little more time looking at the dark side today. some gory details of the real world of Zoe Lund.
Well, this is the 4th tribute, and, the cinematic stuff, we do cover it, especially in that first interview. We talk a lot about Ms. 45 and Bad Lieutenant and special effects, and talked a little bit about Exquisite Corpses today just because I finally got to see it and had a good laugh at some of it.
Yes.
But nonetheless, it's sad that she's gone so tragically, and but I'm really glad that you kicked the habit and you've passed through the other side positive.
Oh yes, I mean, I can't say I'm glad I experienced that 10 years of heroin addiction.
No.
It certainly gave me some perspective, of course. I think I could have learned all I need to know about heroin in maybe 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I didn't really need the extended 11-year course, but when your decades of your life add up, yeah, I spent my 40s in that world. Well, I'm sure glad I'm out of it, And
Yeah.
I certainly have no lingering curiosity about heroin, that's for sure.
That's good.
At least we have that. That's taken care of. That's behind me.
Yep. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, that's great to hear,
Yeah.
Yep. Well, you know what? Maybe next year, I don't know if we could squeeze a 5th tribute or not, but if there's any more stuff we could talk about, maybe sometime late next year we could do a 5th.
If you want, I'll see. I'll probably unearth some more artifacts among the boxes from storage that I still haven't opened.
Mm-hmm.
We may dwell on some other aspect of Zoe, possibly.
You know what? I would enjoy that. Whatever, and I'm always open, if there's stuff you don't want to talk about, I'm respectful of that. So, yeah. But I gotta say, I've enjoyed doing these tributes to her, and I'm very fascinated and I'm happy to do it.
Well, great.
Yep. Well, you know what, Robert? We're coming down to the end of our time, and I just want to wish you a very happy New Year and say God bless you and your family.
Well, same to you, Greg. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Yes.
I'll be here.
Yes, I'll be keeping in touch. I'm happy to do so.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I'm going to say before you go, why not do another plug for my show?
Oh, certainly.
Sure.
This is the Python Hyena on CHSR New Brunswick with Greg Gilbert. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. And of course, Zoe Tamerlis Lund on her 4th tribute. We acknowledge her and still keep her in our memories. So I thank you again for coming on here 4th time and doing this.
Well, thank you, Greg.
Yes. Well, God bless you, and you have yourself a wonderful 2019.
All right, same to you.
What a great way to end the year.
Yes.
Take care, man.
Okay, bye.
Yep, bye.